So I just thought we've only got a short amount of time, so I'll just play a quick game as people are finding their seats. In 2016, you get a prize if whoever gets the right answer. This may not work, because I've usually done it, I haven't done it with so many people before. In 2016, how much do you think was the cost of a night out for men once a month on average? Okay, in 2016, on average, how much did men spend once a month? What was the average amount that people spent?
Going out with the lads or with your wife?
No women, just the lads.
20 quid.
20. Do you know, in fact, actually, if you stand up and you think from 0 to 150, okay, and pick a number. So really quickly, think 0 to 150, stand up. If you think it was between 0 and 50, sit down. If you think it was between 50 and 100, sit down. If you think it was between 100 and 120, sit down. If you think it was between 120 and 125, sit down. How much did you have? 130, 150, 140.
I was going to go 130. I'll go 135.
135. 150. It was 126. Well, thank you. Thanks very much. So just very briefly, my name is Luke. Thanks very much for coming. Yeah. Oh, is there a... Okay. Well, I'll just, as Rob does that, I'll just briefly introduce myself. So, yeah, my name is Luke. I work in London. I've moved to Nottingham. I work in the area of compliance, but specifically focused on mission and overseas mission. So a lot of my work focuses on coaching young guys overseas in least reached churches. So it's a big part of my life. The aim of this session really is three things. One is to inform of things that you may or may not know. You may know some of this stuff already. If you heard the words Peterson and Andrew Tate, that's probably why you're here. It's also to hopefully arm you with a tool, a suggested tool to engage, and also to start discussions, to hopefully help with discussions going forwards within your own churches. That's kind of my three hopes for today. So just in twos, I think you can do twos or threes. I've got two questions up there. When you hear the word masculine behaviour, what comes to your mind? When you hear the word masculine behaviour, what comes to your mind? And what kind of impact does it have, if any? Okay. So just to the person next to you, or if it works out with three of you, just spend a couple minutes having some thoughts on there. And I'll just bring us to a close in a moment. So go, 2 minutes. you can draw your conversations to a close and just finish that off. Brilliant. Thank you. Can I just glean any themes that may have popped up from anyone who might be willing to share something that the pair mentioned? You don't have to say specifically, but something that may have popped up. Is anyone willing to?
Sport match.
Sport match, yeah. Anything around here?
Splitting wood.
Splitting wood.
Taking risks.
Taking risks. Splitting wood.
Taking charge.
Taking charge.
Of the situation.
Of a situation.
I mean, when you said that, I thought it's bound to be a negative. As soon as somebody mentions masculine behaviour, there's going to be a negative.
It's a negative.
It's going to be a but, yeah.
Yeah, so the slant just feels negative.
It's countercultural.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar. Anything different?
We said the good things in life: girls, fast cars, drinking beer.
Okay, yeah. Those things may come up again later. Yeah.
Relationships, like if you've got a bunch of men together, actually being able to feel a little bit more free in those conversations and that being a good thing.
Interesting, fascinating. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Directness or bluntness to it, less driven by sensitivity.
Yeah. So tone, directness, bluntness, how we speak. Yeah.
I think it depends on the setting. Like, if it's late at night and you see some men that have had like a bit too much to drink, they may be a bit loud. But then other times, like what was said earlier, you have like leaders and morality.
So the context can very much have an impression. Yeah, absolutely. And anyone specifically had anything to say about impact, the kind of impact it might have? It was interesting you mentioned about negativity somewhere here. Yeah.
I think one of the impacts of it is all that negativity means that it almost has to justify that you're not one of those people as a man.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like a
Yeah.
you kind of sense it in conversation you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And anything else? Just one last thing. Yeah.
I think we use the physical and the abuse side to help work out the pecking order amongst men.
Yep. Okay. Hold on to that. That may also come up again as well. Thank you. Thanks for engaging with that. So the aim of that was to kind of get a sense of influences, things we listen to, things that change us, shape us, particularly on the whole theme of what today is about. And I think it's fair to say there are all kinds of different influences that might impact, especially some of the things that you've said. It may be family, community, you can have church culture, I've even put theology there, media can have an impression as well. But the thing I really want to focus on today, which you've probably gathered, is YouTube. And hence why Into the Rabbit Hole. And obviously that's got various sort of references to it, which you may be sort of familiar with. And the reason I'm doing this, and the reason why it really started for me, partly because of something that happened at work back in 2017. That kind of started a whole sort of, okay, this is interesting. These words are coming up, these things are coming up. And that got me into the rabbit hole, as it were. And I really started studying when I was serving overseas in West Africa. Even more so, I kind of saw what the definitions were. And it just became very interesting. I got quite sucked into what it was. But what was really interesting was actually more when I came back to the UK and I was at church in London and I was with other guys sitting next to them. Often names would pop up, certain books would pop up, certain things that they were inspired by. They would say, I wish men were more like this in the church. And they'd hold up a book, a specific book, which which will be referenced today, and things that I'd researched, things I know about. And I thought, okay, it's in the church. It's a thing. It's more. And actually, over the last few years, it's evolved. It's grown. You hear this is before Jordan Peterson. He pops up. His name will be mentioned in these types of movements. So would Andrew Tate. But actually, it's all really part of something a lot bigger and can spawn off other things. So the aim of it is really to mention about the voices, but I'm going to focus on one specific voice altogether, and it comes from something called, I don't know if you've ever heard this, called the manosphere. Now, depending on how you go online, what you research, you'll have various different things that pop up about the manosphere. Some it's more positive, some it's more negative. One sort of definition I decided to take basically says that the manosphere refers to a collection of online communities, websites and forums that focus on men's rights, interests and critiques of feminism. My understanding is that it's got its roots that traces back to the men's liberation movement in the 1970s and 1980s, and it's considered that it's evolved into spaces that can promote narrow and aggressive definitions of masculinity. It's suggested that feminism has negatively impacted men's rights, and so the manosphere serves as a platform for discussion around masculinity, where men feel validated in their feelings of loneliness, and it provides a narrative for them. So from that, you have these different movements, these different voices, these different types of ideologies. But there's one particular one that I think really stands out, and it seems to come from this one, which goes quite far back. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the red pill. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually evolved over time, and there's a few big sort of players in it. There's even a documentary that you can watch on it. So the term red pill, and I'm really only going to focus on this specific movement because hopefully just as an example, and this is really more my observations over a period of time. There's a lot more research you can do. You can go into more detail about these things, but this is really just a sort of a helicopter view of so that you can get a bit of a taste of the ideology, and some of these things might be familiar. So the term red pill has its origins from the movie The Matrix, and if you've seen The Matrix, it's a bit of a spoiler alert if you haven't, you have a character called Morpheus, offers a character called Neo a choice between two pills. One is the blue pill and the other is the red pill. And the blue pill basically means that if Neo takes it, he says he stays in this fantasy world called the Matrix. And if he chooses to take the red pill, he's thrust into the real world, meaning he's unplugged from the Matrix and he sees reality for what it really is. So within the red pill movement, you have this sort of ideology. And this is really simplifying it. You have men divided into a blue pill and a red pill. And the blue pill men are men who live in an illusion. They sort of stay in a comfortable thinking way of life, they say, that they don't really face the harsh realities specifically about women. It's not all about that, but that's a big focus on what women are really like. And then the red pill community would say that a blue pill man would see women like a Disney movie. The princess, you need to be successful with them, you need to pander to them, you need to put them on a pedestal. They are the damsel in distress, you have to rescue them. So that is kind of a very rough glance of this sort of blue pill camp. And then you have the red pill man. I just decided, I thought that looks like a red pill guy. The red pill man says that the truth, the reality of women is far from that. Actually, women aren't all they seem to be. Instead of chasing women, focus on embracing your masculinity. Things like build your bodies, maximize your income, work on your confidence, work on your social skills, focus on yourself and your life goals. Do not make women the center of the universe. So if you've ever heard of any of these terms, these would be very much used in the red pill community. SMV, sexual marketplace value, Chad, hypergamy, alpha male, beta male, one-itis. These are just a few of the things that you may have heard thrown around. Does that seem familiar to anyone?
So most of them?
Yeah, most of them, yeah. And I don't think these are exclusive to the red pill community, to be honest with you. I think this is where they use them a lot here, but I think it's evolved in a lot of other sorts of forums, but it seems to be a language that is often used online. Now, this is a very famous graph from the book, The Rational Male, which I'll talk about later. But what this graph shows it's quite a famous graph. It shows what SMV means for men and women. And what the peak sexual value is. So you can see that for younger women, they've got a higher SMV when they're younger, and it sort of declines as they get older. And then men seem to peak in the ages of 35 and 40. So they often, in the podcasts, in the books, they often refer back to this as a bit of a structure. So a man with high SMV would be considered a Chad, an alpha male, and a Chad is a certain type of alpha male who's kind of like the peak. Like he is the best out of alpha male. As you can gather, alpha males form like a social structure of a hierarchy of male. Tall, rich, confident, and then a low SMV may be considered poor, short, socially awkward. And then for women, they would say a high SMV would be youth, beauty, femininity, agreeableness, fertility, low body count. That basically means they haven't slept with many other men. And low SMV would be older, unfit, postmenopause, maybe masculine, aggressive women, high body counts. And it's often considered that the woman with a low SMV will pick up someone called a beta male. And a beta male is someone who is considered quite a weak man by the red pill standards, who will let women walk over them. Maybe he's quite unhealthy, he's not very attractive to women, maybe he's very needy with women, maybe they're obsessed with one woman. That's why you get this term one-itis. They're specifically just chasing one person rather than looking around, analysing and observing and looking for red flags. And then you have this term hypergamy. And hypergamy, essentially what it is that it means that women will prefer to marry up. In a lot of cases, it might mean to someone who has more money. They want to marry a man who makes, maybe is just well up in society, makes a lot of money, just somehow in some form that they can look up to. And so women with high SMV are at their peak of their agency, and they have a wide selection of men that they can choose from. So that is kind of a very, very basic glance of the whole sort of red pill wording and sense that you will pick up if you read any of these books and listen to a lot of these voices. And I think it's fair to say that they've evolved over time, over the last 20 years, to other sort of things. And if you've ever heard of things like incel or black pill, there's even purple pill. I don't know what that one was again. But, you know, I think it seems to have sort of evolved over time. But what I want to do is I kind of want to focus on some of the positives about TRP. I think there are good things to think about. I think it's good, and I think part of this today is to think about, well, what does it mean? What does masculinity actually mean? Are we unique? In what ways are we unique? I think that is not a bad thing to consider. I think it's good to look after our body, to be physically fit as much as we can. I think it's good to work on income, to be a provider, to create security for other people. I think it's good to work on confidence and social skills. I think there are things that can be quite helpful with why it's quite attractive for a lot of guys, and particularly for young guys. And we can talk about, well, why is that? What gap is this filling specifically? Why do people swarm to people like Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate? What's going on there? There's a guy called Kevin Samuels, I think he died a few years ago, who's part of this movement, quite a big voice in it. A lot of it was about his sort of advice to women specifically about what you should be. But he would also try and give advice to men. He would say something along the lines of, if you're working 40 hours a week, and I don't know how practical this advice is really, but get another 20-hour part-time job, save that money so you can provide for others, or just sort of work on yourself, be more resourceful. And so part of it is about trying to make men better, to look after themselves a little bit. I'm sure there's easier ways than working another 20 hours in the week to get more money. And I think it is fair to say that the reality is that women do tend to be attracted to confident, physically healthy, well-spoken, gainfully employed and driven and motivated men. And I think men should want to pursue women and lead in that. This is just my view. Men should look for red flags in women. I think they're things that are helpful and should be considered. But then to kind of focus us on the sort of the negative aspects of it. So these are two kind of leading voices, Rolla Tomasi, Rich Cooper. Rich Cooper kind of focuses more on something called MGTOW, men going their own way. And again, a lot of the Red Pill movement, it's usually from stories of men who have been really badly burnt or hurt in their relationships with women. They've been divorced, they've taken all their money, and so they have come up with this sort of theme and view on women. And so, the MGTOW movement would be like, do not marry, save yourself, sleep with women, but just do not get involved with them. Especially stay away from single mothers. It seems to be a repeated message. So he's got this book called Alpha Unplugged, and this was one of the books that the guys at church were showing me and were reading. And actually in that book there was a lot of practical help about goal setting, about entrepreneurial skills, things like that. And then Rolla Tomasi, he was before that, he was kind of more the original guy, talks about phases that women go through, and you need to assess how they change in order to find the right type of girl for you. And so the negative view for me, I think it's very dangerous because I think in one sense it's the anthropology of it is quite unbiblical. They would come across, these guys would come across as quite naturalistic, materialists. The world view they speak of is firmly on evolutionary biology. Now, obviously, granted, different Christians have different views on the role of evolutionary biology and how it fits within a biblical worldview, but because of their experiences and their philosophy, they seem to brand all women in a certain way, very negatively. So it's almost like they communicate that you cannot trust women. And this is the roadmap, this is the guide, this is how you survive, seems to be the themes in these books. And again, I think, when you look at it, there's probably things they've experienced which are true. The problem I see is when it becomes your fixated worldview of how you see people. So they're basing on science, they're basing on hundreds of guys' experience, so this is how you need to act and this is how you need to think. I'm convinced they would probably deny the power of regeneration. But the thing is, there is a transforming power of the Holy Spirit. Both men and women are evil and do evil things. True Christian women are transformed and reorientated to love and desire and to be obedient to God's word. It's not just regeneration. I would say God's common grace. I don't think all women who are interested in men will base their assessment on the SMV graph necessarily. So that hopefully just gives you a bit of a taste and a flavour. And I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that it seems to really focus about men focusing on sleeping with women. It seems to be the exclusive thing, at least most of the time. And if evolutionary biology is their firm worldview, then it's not surprising if that's the situation. And these teachers have no problem with sleeping, telling men to sleep with women. In Galatians 5 says that men who are not born again are enslaved to their lusts. And that goes against everything Scripture teaches about the beauty of marriage and the meaning of sex within a covenant. There does seem to be sort of Christians who would say that they are red pill. I don't know whether they would all subscribe to the majority of the ideology. But I kind of think, in my view, they seem a little bit incompatible. And I'm saying those last two things there because they're just more my assessments in my view, and there's a reason why I'm doing this in a moment that you'll see. But the aim of just mentioning that, I'm just giving one example because a lot of those voices sort of glean from that. The aim of this is not to say do not listen to this, actually, or do not read those books necessarily. It's actually not the point. It's more about, these things that people are going to be listening to anyway. And you've got a generation of young guys who are really hooked on this sort of stuff for all kinds of reasons. And so, and you can make, we do not listen to this anymore. This is just wrong, or I don't like it. Another way of looking at it is going, actually, how do I discern things which are actually helpful about this, and actually this is unhelpful? Where is there actually a sense of truth in this that actually is actually quite insightful and people should be having a discussion about because it's never been talked about before, and what really is damaging to culture, and specifically to church culture and men. So this was a sort of a system that I'm stealing off one of my favourite podcasters, Kurt Kennedy's Corner. And I just found it really quite helpful when I've sort of listened to things. It's the 3 R's. When you're listening to a voice: reject, receive, redeem. When you're listening to it, is it something from a biblical worldview that this does not stand at all? Okay, I can reject this. And obviously you can go, well, what is a biblical worldview and what is a gospel worldview? That will be a further discussion, but just the idea of, as a Christian, what is your worldview? Does it fit there? Then do you receive it? Are there things in this actually, this is helpful, this is good? Actually, men should be encouraged in a way to get better in certain areas. It should be talked about more. No one ever talks about certain things, and actually it's good. Maybe our fathers, our granddads or great-granddads used to have certain types of disciplines that we don't have anymore, that's almost been lost. And then redeem. Are there things in what they're saying that actually there's kind of truth, there's sort of a biblical theme going on there, but actually it's kind of sort of washed down, it's twisted in some way, but actually it could point to something that's quite helpful that could be talked about. So what I thought that's kind of really me talking. I've got 4 quotes, and this is kind of now where you kind of get into groups, into 3s or 4s. You would see there's some paper at the bottom of your chair. And I've got 4 quotes. And what I want you to do is, using this sort of 3 R's, and I've deliberately taken the name from each of these quotes. 2 of the quotes are from the sort of manosphere community. 2 of them are from Christians who are defining masculinity. And I want you to have a go with using the 3 R's to those quotes. And we're going to just spend some time on each one, depending on the time we have. And then it will just be interesting to get some of your feedback. You don't have to agree even with the Christian quote. The whole point is, just because such and such a famous evangelical speaker said this, means this is what it has to be, necessarily. So I think we're still called to, to be discerning with what we're saying. So it's an exercise you can use just because someone's a Christian or a famous Christian. You can still assess it, which a lot of us probably already do. So I just want to do that as an exercise. But the first one is this one. It's the first quote. And I'd just like to give you a couple minutes, 3 minutes or 4 minutes maybe. I'll call you back. Just have a read through the quote, and just to kind of say what's good about it, what's helpful, what's kind of true, what's not true, where's a little bit twisted here. So in your 2s or 3s, and actually I'd encourage you to turn your chairs as well to one another, because it's kind of going to stay like this. I'm not going to be speaking much after this. To just get into a group to discuss this. So let me give you a few minutes to do that, and just to work on the first quote, and then I'll put the second quote up. And just stick with the first quote, just the first quote for the moment. And if I can just draw you to a close now. So based on what you were just discussing, just to focus on the positives, was there anything positive or helpful that you found in that quote where you go, actually, yeah, I agree with that, that makes sense to me, that's a useful thing to say to someone, or not? Was there anything that came out?
Over in the corner.
Yeah.
So I think we certainly like that the guy's not treating himself like a victim, that he feels like he can do something that could benefit his own actions, and the control is over himself and not others. So that was like, it needs redemption, because to me, I still, the big question I have is, what's your leadership paradigm here? And that, I don't see that.
Yeah.
So I, to better myself, why am I bettering myself?
Yeah.
Is it for my ego, or is it for my wife?
Yeah.
Or for my children, or for my business,
Yeah.
the community I serve? Right?
So there was a redeeming element to that, or what else?
What needs redemption,
Yeah.
I think, even though there's something here that you can build off.
Yeah.
I'm concerned what direction that building is going.
Absolutely. Yes.
God isn't mentioned, which is kind of sad. But the last bit, true masculinity is demonstrated through one's actions. Well, we need to have a rudder on our ship. We need to have control of ourselves. We need to have control of what we say and what we do. So we are told throughout the Bible. And also exert one's own life and sector. We're told to be good gardeners of the world and control it. That doesn't mean we ravage it and do what the heck we like. But it is speaking to two areas where God's absent.
Anything else? Yes.
I think this depends on your focus, right? On where you're focusing on. So like we just said there, we just said about being a Christian, what flows out of your heart. So you've got to be, it's not, you don't change our hearts. Like it's the one, it's the love for Jesus, the Holy Spirit, we're working within yourself. It changes that out so that when you interact with people, they see Christ or whatever, like that flow of out. Whereas the problem with this whole quote, as soon as you get into self-improvement, self this, you kind of lose that because you look inward and don't turn outward. Don't look outward at the world, you look inward at yourself. And where's the truth in that? There's just more depth and despair.
And that's helpful to build on that. But are there other ones? Yes.
Very narrowly. Four pillars is very narrowly. And that's what you said earlier. You don't mention it as well. You know, and let's face it, as Christians, our major focus is love. And none of those pillars actually mentions love. Actually, is about love. And I think it's, no, I can't. Don't get me wrong. I think it's possibly a start, but it's not the be all and end all. You need to have a wider focus than that.
So no, absolutely. So we're focusing on both positive and negative. I was just going to focus on the positives only, but we can. No, that's fine. No, we can flow into that. That's fine. But
I think the positives out of it are pretty good, actually. It just kind of gets to a point to stop. It's the what. It doesn't say why you're doing it. You know, if you're doing it for yourself, then that's not the right thing. If you're doing it to become a better person for your society, for your partner, for your environment, your church, whatever, then you've got to why then you're doing it for, what you yourself.
So there's similar themes here in all of it. Anything different at all?
Adding on to what my group was talking about, there's a lack of serving others. I also noticed there's a lack of respect for another. It's all about, adding on to other points, it's all about self, not about respecting others. You know.
Is there any chance of people using a microphone? Because, all right, I'm deaf, but a lot of guys can't hear what's going on. Speakers.
Hello, 1, 2, maybe. No, I don't have anyone on tech here, but I'll try and say it out loud again. Yes.
I'll try and project my voice a bit more. So we were thinking there's some positives here in terms of trying to get control over our life and our circumstances, rather than just passively drifting through life and not really going anywhere. But we wondered how this would speak to a phase of life where we're suffering, which, and I guess one definition of suffering almost is losing control over your life and your circumstances. I don't really think this worldview has much to say about how you would cope with that, other than just try harder.
Very helpful.
Just picking up on that thing about control, part of our conversation was about, by having this aspiration towards mastery and control over your circumstances, it feels like it's taking God out of the picture, whereby within the theology we expect God is the one with the mastery and control over our lives, and actually sometimes we need to accept that we don't have control. So having that so strongly as part of the aspiration of this picture doesn't feel entirely in keeping, I guess.
That's really helpful. I'm going to move on, just because of time, to the next quote. But in terms of just repeating themes, I think I got was, but you know, what's the how, what's the what, where is this flowing from, where is this going? There was a theme of the idea of taking responsibility and action coming up in what people were saying. But again, it was this, what's the context? Where is this actually coming from? I'll and the absence of God. This is another one, another quote. I won't spend as long on this one because there's similarities to it, but then just a couple minutes in your groups just to do the same thing with this quote here.
A world that offers undermining. I mean, there was a point there. Have you ever seen The Matrix?
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole point is that Neo doesn't do it on his own. Like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to develop the mind, so it's just fine. Because if it goes around, he's going to be doing it.
The other one?
Another one.
Oh yeah, sure. So this is the one you gave me?
Oh, this
Yeah,
one,
that's good. Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the one I gave you, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right, for this next one, I won't ask for feedback, hopefully because there may be some sort of repeated themes. I'm just going to go on straight to the next quote. This is from a very well-known Christian writer, speaker, preacher, pastor. So I'd like you to do the same thing in your groups. It's the third quote, and just do the same thing there. Yeah.
Is that what you're just saying? Yeah, it's one of those couldn't be masculine Christianity. Theology of the church and the mission.
I'm tempted to say, making the women intelligent and secure is a bit of a challenge, but so we get hit because of that. How do you do that?
Making the men lovingly submissive and the women intelligent.
So many people at all, as soon as you write down, you think, nothing like that, I'm going to change that. You get to speak people about this is wrong. You never get it perfect, do you?
Yeah, as you say, this is really counter-cultural, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
Okay, if I can ask you to bring it to a close. Great. So this time I have a mic, which will be more helpful. So similar thing again. What I might focus, I don't know. Actually, if you can say positives or negatives or whatever you think the essence of what you guys discussed really. So anyone willing to sort of share sort of what the group thought?
Thanks. So, selflessness is a theme of the third one, I think. Even just the way it's written is sensitive. It's thinking about, overarching but not dominating. And again, the purpose of protecting and providing, that being the reason for the strength. That's the reason for the courage and the risk taking and etc.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
I think that the third one qualifies all of those characteristics, so it can only be one type of experience, whereas the first two, those characteristics could apply to anybody depending on what direction you're coming from.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I guess following on with that point you just made is like providing that biblical context. So as I said, it's like risk-taking decisiveness in like evangelism. It's like you're taking a risk, you're putting yourself out there publicly. Readiness to sacrifice to protect, but not only protect others, but also protect the gospel, protect the word. I guess having that biblical context in these things he's making, I think it's kind of implied, but yeah.
Does anyone have any thoughts of like, yeah, that sounds, but I'm just not sure, really? Yes. And if you've got a loud voice, you can boom it, that's absolutely fine.
So I really liked it at first, but then I think, what if you're a man and you don't fit this and it doesn't work? Are you therefore not a masculine Christian? So that's what I want to question about this quote.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if I'm displaying my intellectual weakness, but I think maybe it's because it's trying to grapple with something bigger, but it is less clear than the previous two visions. So, I mean, things like contrite courage, I'm not sure, and I mean, even women intelligently secure, I don't know what he's getting at.
Anything else, anything different?
It's hilarious.
Sorry, to come back on that, I guess, is it coming back to what happened in the Garden of Eden, and also what the New Testament talks about in terms of how a man should love his wife, like the church, and I forgot what it says about it. But I guess it's one of those things, isn't it? It all went horribly wrong in the Garden of Eden, and men didn't love as Christ loved the church. So I guess I think it's incredibly hard to try and get across how are we meant to be Christ-like in the way that we have these intersexual relationships. I don't mean sexual, but as in, how do we love like Jesus loved? And the only way is to look at what he did. And I think some of the things here do cover that, albeit I agree with you, my brain's going, not really sure what contrite courage is. But yeah, sorry, that's not really helpful. But I think that's what he's meaning by the last two bits, to feel a great, majestic God making men lovingly strong and women intelligently secure. That is actually relating to what happened in the Garden of Eden.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Is it not just sometimes you read something and it's totally okay, even if it's in a theatre of the rest of the stuff was full of crap, just to go, actually, yeah, this isn't that bad, but actually there's better places to turn. Even this feels like, because there's 4 quotes on here, you're sort of like scrubbing out, there's got to be some goodness here. And maybe on this piece of paper, it isn't that great. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the whole point, is to be looking somewhere else. And then, like, actually, I describe it as you've got two piles of, I don't know if it's describe it in terms of conversation, but two piles of rubbish. Behind that pile is the good stuff. But like, especially in the first bit, it spoke about traditions, didn't it? It spoke about traditional, often stereotypical, all sorts of stuff. What part of culture, what part of time are you taking that bit from? Because maybe you're just looking at that pile of rubbish, and then this other pile of rubbish comes along, it's a bit smaller, so you'll feed from that. Look beyond that, there's probably something a bit better to take than any of it.
Thank you. Yes, are you able to?
Yeah, I know. So I think Mark mentioned Christ-like, and if I'm being really picky, this doesn't mention that. And I think any passage that describes Christian masculinity should refer to Christ as the ultimate example.
Awesome. Anything? Yeah, Rob.
I think it's too vague. So it's very universal, isn't it? Church and mission are marked by overarching male leadership. But if you mean church in the sense of 1 Timothy 2, absolutely. But 1 Timothy 2 doesn't make every man a leader, because you've got to be able to teach. You can't have a room full of chiefs and no Indians. Hebrews says you've got to submit to your elders. And it's not just to women he's talking to. So if it means church made up of families, then yeah, totally I get the whole kind of like men, husbands are to lead in their families. But you see what I'm saying, like it can create this idea of like, yeah, everyone's, leading the church. And it's like, well actually, no we're not.
Brilliant, thank you. So the last quote, I won't spend as long on this one, is this one here. Really very short, just a couple of minutes on this one, same thing. So let me just draw you to a close now. So I'm not going to come and do the same thing. The aim of doing this, really, as I mentioned at the beginning, was you've got many voices. People define things very differently, both within the church, outside the church, and it's a way of discussing, having a conversation, and just an opportunity just to explore, because certainly with things like the red pill or various other types of voices, it's not always an opportunity to talk about them or a place to talk about them and the types of influence they might be having. So the aim of it was really just to try and assess, to discuss what people are saying, what people are coming up with. So really the last thing, and actually before I say the last thing, there's a few, if you are interested, there's a few people who are in some ways, and I'm not sort of necessarily endorsing, it's just more that they seem to have a very powerful voice within this sort of movement. Obviously one of them's here today, he's talking about, I needed to mention the book. There's a few others. Apply God's Word specifically for men is more about coaching on these areas. Effective Purpose, he seems to track the history of various movements over the century and why the church is where it is now. So that's quite interesting. So if you're wanting to kind of see what other Christians are doing and how they're engaging with it, this was just an opportunity to explore that if you want to. Really the last thing I want to sort of spend some time on, and these aren't set in stone questions, was more about your own church culture. And you can change these questions. You don't even have to talk about them if you don't want to. But the aim of it was to, and focusing on the positives, is to think about your own culture at church when it comes to men and engaging men. Churches can do it very differently. But it's an opportunity, again, in your groups, because you're probably from different types of backgrounds and do things differently. Those questions are there as a bit of a baseline, really. But the focus is more, what can you see already? Is there something, actually, this would be really good if this could happen. Actually, this would, based on things I've learned or not learned, or the way I think, are there ways of encouraging our culture? How do you actually get there, if there is something that you can come up with? And actually, is there one thing, one small change that you could make that actually could engage and encourage the type of culture you have at your church, specifically for men? So again, they're loose questions. You don't have to follow them. It's just more ways of talking about sort of encouraging guys specifically within your culture. So if I just spend the last few minutes on that, and then I will hopefully get some feedback, and then that will be us closing down. So again, a couple of minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, to just go in that direction of, okay, well, what does it mean for me? So what could it mean practically as well? So, yeah, in your groups, same groups. Okay, and if I can just draw it to a close. We are very close to lunch-ish. I kind of want to let you go a little bit 5 minutes beforehand to get fresh air, but it would be really great to hear any sort of themes or things that people have discussed that might be worth sharing. So is there anything that would be worth mentioning that people would like? Yeah.
Serving opportunities in churches. Men, if they can't find a serving opportunity, what can be done about that? I think if men do want to serve self-sacrificial, there aren't any, depending on the church. What do they do in those circumstances?
Awesome, thank you. Yes, over there.
Thanks. We were talking about the need for openness, sort of being open to talk about real stuff, and I guess it links in with what we've been talking about all session, which is actually a lot of men are listening to this stuff and don't necessarily talk about it at church.
Yes.
Yeah, my wife would say for Sunday school there's not enough male role models, and especially if you're at a small church, it's like the mums go out with the kids and the men are in church, so she would always want a male role model for the children to look up to and help develop them that way, otherwise it's kids are in the mums until to the
Yeah, one of the things that our church does that I think is quite useful is getting men to connect with each other, just similar to the chapel I was talking about, men talking about issues. And we have a monthly men's meeting in the local pub on the last Tuesday of the month, and I think that's really a good way for guys to open out, have discussion. So, that really works well.
I don't need a microphone. Can I just say, as far as men interacting with children is concerned, and like saying about Sunday school, across the board, my wife's a head teacher at Church of England Primary School, and the amount of people that volunteer to become governors and things like that, it's usually women, and guys, we need to be stepping up, because these are places where we can interact with children, and children can see what it is, and children without fathers, for instance, can see what it is to be a man and a to schools and we talk to children, not just Church of England schools or religious schools, but every school, so that they can see what a man looks like and what a man is. Like I say, some children do not have a positive male role model. So, get yourself in there.
Thank you for sharing that. Anything different in, yeah? Do you want a mic? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have the mic. I'm not really sure what I'm going to say. Totally. My head's a bit like not there today, so you have to excuse me. Sorry, my thoughts gone. Sorry.
Okay. Well,
if it comes back,
yeah.
if it comes
just,
back,
just pop up. Yeah.
Adding on to male role models, I think many men are afraid in a way. If there are some men that have never been parents, well, obviously I'm not a parent because I'm 18, but if you've got people in their 20s or late 20s that are not parents, they may be afraid of going into a role working in Sunday school because they haven't been parents, they don't know what it's like in a way, you know what I mean?
Thank you. But it will, it will train you. That will, honestly, when I was 18, I worked in Sunday school, and it helped develop my skills of looking after children. Sorry.
That's right. Get it correct.
Yes, so male suicide is a big thing. And young men are the most disenfranchised. And these are part of the reasons why they're doing it. Because there's no hope. Because, they can't get on the housing ladder. They've got, there's no chance of them kind of, fulfilling their role as a man and being the provider and that kind of thing. And so there's a big problem there in the world. And I think there is a role there for the church where we do need to get together as men. And we need to just have men's meetings together and thrash some things out and form a community, because there's lots of men, and I include myself in this, where we get to a stage in life, get married, we lose our friends, our mates, and then we're kind of lonely as, well, obviously we've got our wife, we've got our immediate family, but then outside of that, no, and there's a lot of men like me, and we're all in a church together, and we're not fellowshipping with each other just as men, because sometimes we need a sounding board outside of our situation, outside of our marriage, and we need to encourage each other, to strengthen each other, and get ourselves out of this quagmire, and then the church can get the culture and society out of the same quagmire. You know what I mean? So I don't know how that's all going to work, but pan out. But I guess that's what I'm saying. We need to do that. We need to just do that thing where we're gathering together as men on a regular basis. It doesn't have to look a certain way, but just do it.
Thank you very much. Just a couple more before we end. Are there anything that people have said that their church has done, or things that have been encouraging to them?
I think just building on the comments we've sort of been hearing in this gentleman just now, it's really sad, isn't it? We are men. We should be leading, but we are in desperate situations. We've got men who are working exceptionally hard. I think they're finding it very tough to be able to relax. We need to do that as men. So, an example. So I sort of lead a men's social group at church. This Friday we're going on and having an Indian meal. Very easy to do. You find how interested men are in going out for a meal, meeting with other men, going out for beer, just to join each other, just to talk. The interest is sometimes far more than a standard prayer meeting. And what does that say?
that says that, you know, guys need to go out, they need to meet. I completely agree. We need to sort of be with each other. We need to build up culture between us. We need to be able to share things. It's very important. If we're going to lead, we need to do it in a very relaxed sort of way with each other. So I would encourage men in this room, if you can, if you've got a need within the church where guys need to get out to sort of enjoy themselves and get away from doing what they're doing on a daily basis, set up a social group for the men, because it'll be very, very powerful for you.
Thank you very much. And maybe just one more, something very different. Anyone to add that hasn't really been said? Yeah.
We do have a men's group at our church that meets about once a month and has done for many years. The advantage with how we do it is that it's not just men who are Christians who attend that group. We try and outreach, and I think that you'll find that men who are outside of the church or on the periphery of it will often come to those sort of groups where it might be a curry evening, or we get a speaker in who's not necessarily directly Christian, but there's always a Christian theme within that. And that builds links with people who are on the periphery of the church, rather than just looking internal. I'm not saying it's not important to have men's groups that are purely Christian in terms of house groups and things. That is important, but it's also important as part of our evangelism to look outwards, to meet the needs of those people who are on the periphery or have no contact with the church, and certainly wouldn't necessarily cross the threshold on a Sunday morning to start with. So I think a men's group is important, and I encourage churches to do that, but look outward rather than just inward.
Nigel, thank you very much. I'm going to end it there. I'd just encourage you to continue conversations, and particularly if there's anything about voices, ideologies, things that may be bubbling up, to really kind of try and recognise research, see what they're doing, and other ways of maybe engaging with those voices if there are, but also just things of what does it mean practically within a church culture that could also support men. So that's really it. It's time. It's about lunchtime, so I don't want to keep you any longer. But just to say thank you for coming, thank you for engaging. And if you hadn't heard about any of this stuff before, I hope it was at least somewhat useful. So thank you.
Did it record?